booming jerked me out of sleep, woke the dishes and set them to chattering. And St. Clair dashing through the dark to the children. "Must be the Lord coming," cried one of the servants. I realized I've been dreaming of Mexico. How strange. I lit a candle. The clock read 4:30. All of Charleston seemed to be in the streets. I dressed, stepped out the front door, and was embraced at once by a teary-eyed stranger. "Praise the day!" he shrieked into my face. "They're firing on Fort Sumter." We gathered on Judge Fry's flat roof. The cannons rattled the very constellations. Shells sailed their lit fuses, tracing caliber-perfect arcs, and then exploded. Each illumination of the bay was greeted with appreciative oohs and hurrahs. Well, you'd have thought the crowd was enjoying the 4th of July display. Some brought baskets of food to the rooftops, and they raised their glasses in toast to South Carolina, Jefferson Davis, General Beauregard. I was silent, though I shared their allegiance. I had fought, however, 14 years before, Veracruz, Mexico City. I remember well what shells do to living flesh, and I felt a melancholy mood. Amid all the cheering, the Negroes were similarly glum, suspiciously so. If they rejoiced that a war that might break their bonds had begun, they dared let no one discern it. By a bursting shell's light, I eyed Vernon, my body servant. He caught my glance, and the snake of smiles left his lips like a snake disappearing. Oh.
I'm Lily Malloy, a farm girl from Minnesota. Minnesota is as flat as a cracker. Rise up on your toes and you can see across the state. Scarce even a tree in sight for a few willows beside the creek. Father said God put willows here that man might have switches to enforce his commandments. Father was a grim-faced Scot and a great believer in switching. Each morning he put on his spectacles, without which he was all but blind, and each evening all 6 of us were whipped for whatever failings he noticed that day. If no fault could be found, we were whipped just the same for any wrongs committed out of his sight. Wee Sarah was not spared, nor Patrick, 17 and tall. Father was taller still. One chill April Sunday in 1861, we rode into church and found a crowd before the door. Mr. Nielsen was reading from a newspaper. Fort Sumter had been attacked. The gallant defenders had surrendered the next day. The president had called the Union to arms. That such a far distant doing should, like a lever, shake Pearl County amazed me. Mother wept. The men swore despite the Sabbath. There was talk that a regiment of 1,000 soldiers was being raised in Minnesota. Patrick's eyes glittered like diamonds. Reverend Bott railed against the rebels that day. His sermon subject was, "A man's worst foes are those of his own household." Father repeated the line at supper, his eyes fixed upon Patrick. And that night, Father gave Patrick a terrible thrashing. Afterward, Patrick asked the reasons. "You're thinking to scamper off," he shouted. "Don't think I don't know it, and don't think you'll succeed." He stood his full height. "I can see 50 miles, I'll hunt you like a wolf and skin you like one too." I didn't think I'd sleep that night. At dawn, I woke to find my hand holding an old willow whistle that Patrick had fashioned. I knew then he was gone, and I began to cry. We were 5 years apart, but dear to each other. How I did fear that he would be caught. Then I heard Father roar, and the stone-hatted rogue took my spectacles with him.
Hi, my name's Sham Sugg from Arkansas. My mama and daddy died when I was very young, and horses have always served me for kin. I never did have one of my own to care for. The folks I lived with kept mules. But we put up wayfares crossing Arkansas, and their horses trusted me straight away as if they'd known me from before. I'd feed them, wash them, brush them, and we'd talk. An hour after arriving I felt family among them and forlorn as a ghost when they'd gone. I was bored with Mr. B's when the traveler told us about Fort Sumter. He left us with a newspaper from Virginia. I was 19 and I couldn't read a lick, but I spotted a picture of a horse. I asked Mr. B to read the words below. It said they were calling men up to join the cavalry. Now, Mr. B hated Yankees the way a broom hates dirt, and he started in again on Lincoln and the sovereign states and the constitutional right to secede. I just nodded my head like a wooden puppet, thinking about the newspaper instead. It said they'd give me a horse.
Though my skin is quite light, I'm a Negro. I'm proud of it. And I wept with joy along with my brethren at President Lincoln's call for men. How we yearned to strike a blow in the battle. Though the state of Ohio refused us the vote and discouraged us from settling, we rose to our aid just the same. No less than Cincinnati's whites, we organized meetings, heard ringing speeches, sang Hail Columbia and John Brown's Body. All recognized that Cincinnati was vulnerable to capture. We therefore proposed to ready a company of home guards, its numbers, training, and equipment to be provided by the black citizens of the city, and its services offered for her defense. At last, the nation's eyes would behold the Negro's energy and courage. We set up 2 recruiting stations. They were filled at once with scores of volunteers. Cheered by this magnificent response, we planned a second meeting at a schoolhouse. Arriving, I found the building all but ringed by a crowd of clamoring whites. Many had clubs, several were drunk. "It's a white man's war," one addressed me point blank. "You'll do no damn parading about with guns." I've tried to forget the coarser things said. I inserted the key in the door's padlock, but a police captain roughly drew it out. He announced that our meeting was canceled and our entire enterprise with it, on the grounds of inviting mob violence. "Go back to your miserable homes," he ordered us, rather than the whites, "and stay there." I vowed that I would do otherwise.